Hello and welcome to the Local Econocast produced by Local Development Finance Team at the United Nations Capital Development Fund. We are a center of excellence and innovative fund for local government finance and local economic development finance in the world's 47 least developed countries. In this podcast series, we will share and broadcast cutting-edge knowledge, ideas, and insights from experts and practitioners on various topics related to local economic development and the role of local government. There will be two parts in each episode: an interview with a guest who has a fresh perspective on local development, and a conversation with a staff member who will share their stories, experiences, and passion in the development field.
Welcome to Local Econocast Episode 2. My name is David Jackson, the Director of Local Development Finance at United Nations Capital Development Fund. In this episode, we're going to discuss the planet, climate change, local governments, and whether we will be able to create an environment safe for our grandchildren to live in. Climate change nowadays is not a buzzword anymore. It's having a real observable effect on the environment and people's life. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, degraded land, and other observable changes are already affecting economies and lives. So what is the future of the Earth? Can we slow down the damage to our planet? And if so, what is the role of local governments in this? Today we have Luke Ganakaja with us. Luke is the former Executive Secretary of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification and Special Representative of the Board of the Local Climate Adaptive Living Facility. Luke is also a former Minister of Environment from the country of Benin in West Africa. Welcome, Luke. It's a pleasure to have you in our podcast. First of all, what is the future of our planet as a habitat? Will the Earth be fit for humans' habitation in the context of unfavorable climate change, or are we all doomed? Luke, over to you.
Well, thank you, David, for having me. As it stands, the future looks rather gloomy and doomy, just because since 1975, our exposure to disaster has doubled. It means we have produced more disaster since 1975. You put it into context and you think about areas where people are not prepared. They don't have the capacity to adapt and even to mitigate those disasters, including in developing countries. And then what about LDCs? So from that perspective, the future looks gloomy and doomy. But let us also remember that 2015 has been a very productive and forward-looking year. We have had the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction, the Kyoto New Agenda for New Urban Agenda, and the outcome of the Addis Ababa Conference on Financing for Development. But if you put all these together and you think about implementation, then you can be hopeful. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, provided that not only we converge in what we have to do, but we remain consistent and coherent in the way we do it regarding sustainability. So I remain hopeful.
Well, Luke, let's hope that your hopefulness is the right call. Now, just a follow-up question, Luke. I mean, we have seen that some governments are reluctant, perhaps, to fully commit to some of these challenges. But can the future of humankind on this planet be something that we leave only up to the leaders of nation states? Or is there a role for local governments in meeting these challenges? And if so, what should they do? Over to you.
Well, you can't rely only on government. When you think about 1945, when the United Nations has been created, the global GDP actually was generated largely by public investment. Nowadays, this is not the case. So non-state actors have become very key players for sustainability. I think about local government, I think about the private sector, I think about communities. So making sure that they get committed and remain really converging regarding what they do is important. Of course, government need to set the political agenda. They also need to provide the right incentives, and they also need to make sure that public investment are used in a very catalytic manner. If this is the case, I do hope that non-state actors could really be game changers. And local government are the game changers in that regard. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about ecosystem, actually. If you bring all our concern down to the local level, it's about how we relate to the functions and the services that are so vital for each and every one of us, being the head of state for the most powerful country of the world, or being a smallholder farmers in the least developed countries. We all depend on the ecosystem, on the services of the ecosystem, and those services depend on the functions of the ecosystem. So when the functions are deregulated, or when the functions are no more really operational, or when they are undermined, then we are in jeopardy.
Yes.
So my hope here is that we will strengthen the ability and the capacity of local government. I was yesterday in a meeting discussing how we are making progress towards SDG 1 about eradicating poverty and SDG 2 about eradicating hunger. Mm. And I listened for 2 days to participants. Mm. And I was quite surprised that it has taken the third session for someone to mention how important it is for us to go towards decentralized action. And then I took the floor and said, but whatever progress we have made towards reducing hunger, if you check those progress, they have one thing in common. It is decentralized action. Because production is at the local level. There's no land that is global. Land is local. Ecosystems are the first and foremost local. So the point that we need to hammer here is local government can be game changers, provided that they are enabled, capacitated, and resources are also made available for them. It is more so in the developing countries, more so in the LDCs. We need to make sure that local government in LDCs are capacitated. I made a point because I know that's what people have in mind. Oh yes, if you decentralize, let's say climate finance for adaptation in local government, yes, it will get lost because of corruption. I say, okay, good. So you prefer to centralize corruption? The point here is, and that's what we have experienced with local climate adaptive living facility in a number of countries, is when you bring the resources at the local level, you bring all stakeholders around the table, you bring stakeholder concern, or what they call success, you figure it into monitoring mechanism and indicators, and they are around the table for monitoring progress, the money will not be lost. That's what we must do.
Luke, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to have you on the local Econocast. We hope to invite you back at some point in the near future. And thanks so much again, Luke. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
After the break, we will move on to the second part of this episode, interviewing a UNCDF staff member.
In part 2 of this podcast, we'll be talking to Armel Djengi, also from Benin, who is working on a pipeline of investable initiatives for domestic banks to finance climate resilience and food security at the local government level. Hello, Armel. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, David, for inviting me today. In fact, I am a national of the Republic of Benin in West Africa, currently working for UNCDF as the investment officer for the local finance initiative program in Benin. And as such, I organize and facilitate LFI Benin key program activities related to project development and financing, capacity building for the stakeholders, and resources mobilization for the program. But I should also mention that I'm involved in the building interface capacity for the deployment of the program in other West African countries such as Guinea, Conakry, Gambia, Senegal, and Niger. Now, prior to joining UNCDF, I was a banking and finance professional with 15 years of experience in the banking sector in Benin. I worked for 4 different international banks, specializing in corporate finance, international trade transactions, treasury management, and capital market operation in West African Monetary Union. From the academic standpoint, I will say that I hold an MBA degree in international finance from Brandeis University in Greater Boston, and I am also a former scholar of the Fulbright program in the US. So, in a nutshell, that is what I can tell about myself for the moment.
Thank you very much indeed. And how did you get into the local development finance field?
Well, I got into the local development finance field, I would say, as a response to a personal ambition to broaden my career perspective after many years of activities in the corporate finance field in the banking sector in Benin. So I was then very fortunate and proud to be hired by UNCDF in February 2016 as the investment officer of the LFI program in Benin. But to me, this is also the culmination of many years of involvement in various informal community development activities with various charity associations.
Thank you, Armel. What does local development finance mean to you? And which aspects of local development finance do you feel most passionate about?
I see local development finance as the effort of local communities in leveraging and using local resources to support and catalyze their growth and expansion through public and private investment projects that will reduce poverty, increase the prosperity and well-being for localities. And in that regard, I feel most passionate about providing technical assistance to local governments, domestic banks, and local business for the preparation of locally born bankable projects that will attract financing, create jobs, and boost local economic growth.
Armel, thank you. What would be the most rewarding experiences in your career to date? And then maybe you could let us know what would be the most depressing experiences that you've had so far.
Okay, I would say that I feel my most rewarding professional experience when I'm on the field for on-site visits to locally born projects with high impact on thematics such as food security, women's economic empowerment, climate change, clean energy, etc. And then it is occasion for me to learn and validate realities on ground and explore ways for financial closure with the project developer. But on the other side, one depressing experience in my career is when I am faced actually with the recurrent reluctance from domestic financial institutions to finance bankable locally bond projects, just for the sake that it does not follow the preferred area of trade activities. Easy or quick win activities and so on. So it is a little bit painful to remain unhelpful when you have to encourage local governments or project developers to move forward in the quest for financing.
Right. So, why do domestic banks not want to finance local development programs? I mean, of course, domestic banks want to make money, but these programs, these investments are profitable. What is holding the domestic banks back?
Okay, there are some reasons. One might be sometimes they don't have good mastery of the sectors that are concerned about those projects, and the other way is also just some stereotype. So about the risk involved in those activities, just because they don't have the instruments actually to have a good access of the risk involved and how to mitigate those risks. But although we are bringing in new instruments, new perspectives in order to mitigate the risk, it is still not well received, well understood by the financial institutions. Sometimes, some of them, but some are making efforts actually to move forward with in that quest.
Okay, very interesting answer. And I think, of course, this is what we're trying to solve with our work. For me, a lot of it is a culture. People think of banks as being interested only in numbers, but of course, there are other human aspects to it as well. And banks sometimes have a culture of investing in certain sectors or certain areas. And it's almost the perception of risk is not necessarily the same as the actual risk. I mean, would you agree with that way of looking at banks in terms of their reluctance to invest in local development? Over.
Absolutely, David. I agree with that. It is a matter of culture of the bank, which needs to be corrected actually, because as you say, by definition, the bank is also there to finance the economy. So talking about the economy, particularly when we come to local economy, it is also encouraging those projects that really bring development, that bring transformation, that brings change at the local level. So you are right on that, and this culture should be corrected progressively with our efforts in advocating for the development of those transformative projects.
Thank you, Armel. Maybe a couple more questions. Firstly, what do you think is the biggest challenge in local development finance currently? I guess we've touched on some of the challenges, but what would you say was the biggest of them all?
Okay. To me, the biggest challenge is still on the shortage of the capital. Shortage of long-term capital in order to finance the development. But this shortage is also scaled with how to, it is linked, how to improve the skill of the human capital, and also how to get bankable investment opportunities on the demand side.
Finally, we have a new Secretary General of the United Nations. There is a new leader of UNDP. If you were called by the new Secretary General and he said, Armel, what do you see as the future of the development world and the United Nations? What should the United Nations do better in the future? What would be your answer to him?
Okay. First of all, I will let him know that the resources needed every year to bridge the funding gap in order to meet the sustainable development goals cannot be met through public resources alone. So it is clear that today we should also consider private investment. So that is why I will see the future of development world in making the blended finance model work with a new approach that will focus on the entire ecosystem in order to drive the inclusive and transformation of market. For example, we want to see government initiatives to be connected to market realities with a comprehensive strategy. We also want to see donors have better integration in the mechanism in order to leverage one another's investment. But another point is also to try to monitor and evaluate those plans in order to see how they ensure transparency and accountability in order to silence this habitual criticism made to blended finance approach. And in conclusion to that question, I will also say that for the future of United Nations, I will also appeal for a deeper commitment for peace building in the world, because this is a priority number one for any development effort, and also taking into account the environment protection throughout the world.
Well, Armel, let's hope that he picks up that phone and makes that call. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your stories and experience, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you very much, Armel.
Thank you so much, David.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening. See you next week.